Right now, I have to stop saying.
Boy, it never gets old, does it?
It's amazing.
I love it. This is a new week, and we are chugging along. You know, we're almost near the halfway point of our summer series, the other 31. Believe we are on team number 14 today. Yeah, it is. But we got a special one. Only one guest, because our guest today merits a full hour. Not that the others don't. We could have done a full hour with any of these guys or ladies. It's been fantastic. But we have a special one because he used to work with us and in the same city. Matt DeFranks, formerly of the Dallas Morning News, will be here to talk about the St. Louis Blues right now on DLLS. It is Monday. It is August 18th. This is the DLLS Stars podcast as we welcome you to yet another week of the Other 31. We continue to roll along with our summer series, checking in with all other 31 NHL teams because we talk a lot about the Dallas Stars, of course. Today, we've got another Central Division team, not our first, actually not our second either. That was the Jets on Friday. It's our third. It's the St. Louis Blues today. Sam Nessler, Craig Ludwig, back on the show after a few days of PTO in Wisconsin. Look at that. Luddy, we had viewers saying that you had abandoned the show after only a couple of days away. Can a guy take a vacation?
The thought entered my mind.
And then, of course, we have Katya producing today, as she will be vocal, but you won't necessarily see her because she is anti-camera, even though she's better in front of the camera than all three of us combined, I think. But she says no. Big time welcome now for our next guest because he's going to be here for the full hour. We don't ask that a lot, but for Matt DeFranks of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, still sounds weird to us.
Yeah.
Matt, welcome into the show. Sam and I were talking before the show today. I didn't realize that it's only been a season and a half since you left Dallas and went to St. Louis because I believe it was January of 23, right?
Yeah, it was like Christmas time of 22,
yeah.
January 23, yeah.
Which it feels, and you know, we loved having you here, of course, but like it doesn't feel like it's only been a year and a half. It feels like it's been 3 or 4 years, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's been 2.5 years, right?
I can't do math.
I don't know.
I think it's been 2.5 years, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
so it is 23 through 25.
Right.
See,
so like it feels like
you didn't correct me either.
Like it feels like I just was there with the morning news covering the Stars. It feels very new still.
I agree. Well, thank you for joining us today. We have a lot of things we can talk about. Let's start with the coaching change because that's a big topic for all of us. And, of course, Dallas now going through that as well with Glen Gulutzan. But Jim Montgomery, former Dallas Stars head coach, goes to St. Louis as sort of a rehabilitation assistant coaching job, then gets the Boston Bruins job, has a record season in the regular season, then they get bounced by the Florida Panthers. And then this past season gets fired. And what was it, 4 or 5 days of unemployment before Doug Armstrong swooped in and swapped out Drew Bannister for Jim Montgomery. And look, I'm sure Drew Bannister is a great coach. I don't think anybody on this show would argue that going for Jim Montgomery was not the right decision. It seemed like an obvious move, and Army showed a lot of aggressiveness to do it, and it seems like it's going to be a really good fit for St. Louis. What was Monty's first half of plus season like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was honestly a little bit similar to his first year in Dallas. That was my first year in Dallas in 18-19, and when he arrived, I think he expected things to click faster than they actually ended up doing. Like in Dallas, I think he talked about wanting it to be around Thanksgiving to have his system installed, players playing the way that he wants them, but getting the results that they wanted at that time, and really they weren't doing that. I mean, I remember that first year. I think we all remember for the Jim Light stuff, but there's also Monty coming in and saying he was disappointed in being unable to change the culture of mediocrity.
Yep.
Like
Oh, yeah.
that was one of his quotes from that first year in Dallas, and I was brought back to that a little bit this year or this last season when he comes in and you can see there underlying changes. The defensive numbers ticked up a lot, but the results weren't really there. And I went back and looked at his coaching career from RPI to Dubuque to Denver, Dallas, St. Louis, Boston. He had never missed the playoffs. It had been since he was I don't even know when he would have last, but it had been a long, long time since he'd ever missed any sort of postseason competition. And the Blues were looking like a team that was going to miss the playoffs. So it felt kind of similar-ish in that, it took a while to get to where they wanted to be. And then after the Four Nations, like that's really when they took off. They had that 12-game win streak. Robert Thomas became one of the best players in the league. They got some decent goaltending. The power play ticked up. The defense played a lot better. Like there was a lot of things to like that ended up, making them move up the standings, but previously had kind of shown in the way they played. Like they had the underlying numbers. It's just their penalty kill was horrible and was costing them games. And as soon as it kind of all went together after Four Nations, they kind of rolled into that playoff spot and really should have won their first round series against Winnipeg when we look at Game 7 and how that collapsed. But you look at where they were when they fired Drew Bannister to where they ended the season being disappointed in a first round exit. Really, that's quite a turnaround. And even the move itself, just to fire Bannister and hire Montgomery, I think, in hindsight, we can look at it and say, yeah, I mean, great move. They wanted Montgomery. This is a guy they eyed when he was available. They went out and got him. But I think if we think back to last summer, they had a coaching search as well. Like Drew Bannister was the interim after Craig Berube got fired the year before. And so they had an opening. And, I think the timing of when they hired Bannister on a full-time basis, it was after Boston. I think they won their first round series last year. And then it was realized that they weren't going to be firing Montgomery that year. So they brought on Bannister on a full-time basis, lined up his coaching contract to line up with when Doug Armstrong would hand over the reins to Alexander Steen. So everything had kind of lined up to Bannister as being a developmental coach, a short-term coach, line up with their front office changes. And then, a few months later, that plan is kind of dispatched. So I think that was more of the surprising part of it, was that they had this plan to hand things over, and then suddenly it got changed and Montgomery was brought in.
Matt, everything that you said there doesn't even happen unless it is for the guy you mentioned, Doug Armstrong. So I'm curious in how you think that transition is going to go to Steen. I don't think he'd be turning the reins over if he wasn't satisfied for what he's got coming next. But that and where you see Doug Armstrong, I know he's going upstairs. What did they sign him for, an extra 2-3 years or something like that to be a president? And I don't know if that has anything to do with the Toronto, all the rumors about that, but just a little bit about Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, I think this was mentioned by Doug last summer when they announced the succession plan. He said there comes a time where you have to do what's best for the organization. I think every GM wants to think like that. Every GM wants to message that, and I think every GM also has an ego, right? I mean, I think even all of us, everyone who works in sports has an ego, right? And Doug is very confident in what he does, I believe. And when it comes to Steen, he's a guy who obviously very recently retired, very young guy, and he did some things for the Blues in Sweden. And then that was the year they drafted 3 players that were playing in Sweden in the first round. So he was part of their development in Europe. And then this past year, after the succession plan was announced, he moved over to St. Louis. He's been traveling with the team kind of everywhere, picking up little things here and there. You can see I mean, Doug, for as good as a GM as he can be, I think we know he's also a pretty strong personality. Uh, Steen brings a little bit softer a touch, I think, to the personable side, um, to the Blues, and I wonder how much Doug's involvement will change throughout the 3 years as president of hockey operations. Because Steen will become the GM next summer, but Doug's still going to be there. He's still going to be trying to teach. He's still going to be trying to involve himself, I believe. But after that, I think it'll be as kind of a gradient system, right? You'll go from being needed a lot to being needed, moderately to being needed a little bit as Steen gets more and more involved and more experienced in the position. So I do think Doug also likes his place in Naples. I think he mentioned, when he's done, he's going to go to Naples and no one's ever going to see him again. So I do think that he is looking forward to that part, but I think he wants to make sure that he hands it off in a good position. And honestly, when we look at next year and the cap situation they'll be in, the young players that they will have coming, the prospects that they'll be having maturing, and kind of the mix of players they'll have, the competitive window they kind of opened by doing the offer sheets last summer. I think that combined with him sticking around, it's setting up to put the organization in a good position during the transition.
Matt, as the Monty stuff started going on, it kind of became obvious that the main reason for firing Bannister was because Monty was available. Was that communicated to Drew Bannister at all? Was that kind of an internal conversation of like, I know they weren't happy with where they were, but it was pretty obvious that the reason was outside of that. Was that actually communicated to Bannister and within the organization as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically the conversation that Doug Armstrong had with Drew Bannister. I can remember it pretty vividly when it all happened. We were in New York. They had just played a Saturday night game on Long Island against the Islanders. And after the game, they lost. I'm talking to Pavel Buchnevich, and he's pretty frustrated about how they're always working on defense. We don't work on offense. That's why we never score. We never practice offense. And when we spoke to Drew Bannister after that, very short, very did not want to be there. I think for the previous week after Montgomery got fired, I mean, there was all the talk in St. Louis was, are they going to do this? Like, it makes sense. He has familiarity with the city. He has family here. He wants to be here, potentially. Is this going to happen? And so, Drew Bannister kind of heard that for a week. And I think he can sense when the players start talking about wanting to do something different. And so I think he kind of felt it at first. And then that Sunday morning is when they actually, I think, did everything. And Doug Armstrong told Drew Bannister, this wouldn't be happening unless it was this guy. Like, this guy is the reason that we're letting you go. I think that was also reflected in the contract terms, right? Like, Montgomery got a 5-year contract, last year plus 4 more, whereas Bannister got 2. And even if you think back to when Pete was hired in Dallas, what did he get? 4?
4, I think. Right? Yep.
So a 5-year contract for a coach in a league that there's not a lot of 5-year coaches is kind of indicative of how much they wanted to bring him in. And when I spoke to Bannister a few weeks after that, he kind of took the high road, and he was saying he wasn't bitter towards the organization. They gave him a shot in the American League to be the head coach in Springfield. They gave him a shot to be the head coach in St. Louis. But you have to think it's got to sting when you get fired just because someone more attractive gets let go.
I'm used to that. Girls find someone else more attractive and leave me in the dust.
You're literally engaged.
Yeah, but that would take
I know,
a long time.
I was going to say, come on now.
It took me like 33 years to do that, though.
Hi,
Matt.
Katie. He's very happy with his current situation. Don't think anything less of it.
Sam.
All right. Up next, on that wonderful note, let's segue to some ad reads and more with Matt DeFranks in a moment here on DLS.
My first.
Yep.
All right. Are you on your own financially because you just sewered your fiance on television? Well, finances can be messy and confusing, but with Monarch Money, it makes it simple for you to get
Not for
everything
you, split in half.
in one place. Makes it easy for you to get everything in one place that acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. It's more than just your average budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center for all of your accounts, investments, and goals, so you have everything right in front of you. Make it simple to reach your goals, because without a clear picture, those financial dreams can feel out of reach. The finance tool people actually love. You can join over 1 million households with Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use the code DLS at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code DLLS.
Guess what? We have a new sponsor on the show today, and it's Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Woo! Preseason football is underway. College football is just about to start. You can already make season-long more or less picks for the 25 season on Prize Picks. Enter your picks before week 1 kicks off for the season-long ones. But you know what? It's simple to play. Prize Picks, you just make more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I actually went on there on Friday and did the start of the EPL season for a couple ones. And
Premier League.
Yes, and I was sort of hit or miss on that one. Got a couple right, then picked a guy who apparently was suspended for the first game. So that didn't go over so well. But, of course, Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the Prize Pick app today. Use the code DLLS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code DLLS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's bring Matt back in now that we've completely thrown a grenade in your upcoming nuptials. We'll worry about that later.
That's what I do.
Matt, as I'm looking at your coaching discussion with the Blues, that playoff series with Winnipeg was just wild. And there was I want to talk about that, but Monty had a quote in the post-game 7 after that overtime loss to the Jets, which we all thought it was going to be Dallas and St. Louis again in the second round. Monty had a quote, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but he said something to the effect, it's a coach's job to try to maximize your team as close to their ceiling as possible. And he said, I think we got pretty close to that. Given, as you were talking about the disappointment under the first half of the season, and then the turnaround under Monty and where they got to, and being understandably upset that they didn't beat Winnipeg, do you think that Monty got close to that group's ceiling at the end of last season?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, if we look at that lineup and just going down the middle, obviously Robert Thomas is, I think, probably one of the most underrated players in the game and a true number 1 center. And you have Braden Shen, who probably on a cup contending team, he's probably a third-line center. But when Holloway and Kyrou were on his wings, that was a pretty good line. After that, you had Oscar Sundqvist and old friend Radek Faksa, who's back with you guys in Dallas now. So just looking at the centers, that's not a team that should be in the second round, if we're being honest, right? Like, that's not a center lineup that should be there. They don't have a number 1 defenseman on the back end. Outside of Thomas and maybe Kyrou, they don't really have offensive game changers proven year after year up front. So it wasn't like there was this team that was stacked with talent that you couldn't miss, and they had depth everywhere. I mean, they did have reasonable depth when you got to the guys like Buchnevich and Holloway, what Jimmy Stutterer provided in the playoffs, what Zach Bolduc did last year before he got traded to Montreal this year. Like, they had depth, but it wasn't they didn't have that top tier skill that a lot of teams really need. And so I think you're probably right, where you look at the ceiling of that team and where we thought that they could be. And game 7 of the first round is probably pretty close. And I honestly think that the Blues can probably be pretty proud of the season that they turned in last year. And it was one that kind of, you could see it change the fans' minds too, right? So early on in the season, they didn't have a sellout, and that broke out a long streak of sellout games, and that became pretty regular that they didn't sell out games. You know, they weren't very good. They'd missed the playoffs for 2 years, and then suddenly they get hot. They're selling out every game. They're obviously, the playoff atmosphere was really good, and I'm sure that rolled into next year, where you have the promise of what happened last year, plus a full season of Montgomery, and getting Holloway and Broberg for another year, and like, it's just, the things seem to be growing, and you can see that in the fan output as well, both in terms of interest in going to games, and interest in social media, and honestly reading stories when they're good. I think it kind of rejuvenated the fan base, and that's helpful for a franchise that missed the playoffs for 2 years in a row. And if they had missed for a third year in a row, it would have only the second time in franchise history that they would have done that, I believe. So it's been a lot of success here in St. Louis, and they need that sort of thing to kind of carry forward too.
Well, Matt, so what did they do? Like, did they have such a good draft? Like, the one thing Army, had said this a few years ago, that he's not a believer of a teardown. He doesn't like it. He wants to be able to stay competitive. He doesn't want the fans doing going through that whole phase where there's a rebuild and you have those years. So he wanted to be competitive, which is what he did. So are they good enough? Are they good enough to take another step? Binnington's going to be a little bit older, and I know they signed the other guy for some pretty good money. They got 10 million wrapped up in the goalies, but are they good enough to get to the second or third round?
Yeah, I don't know about third round, second round. I think they're right there. I mean, I if I'm them, I think it's just got to be building another year in the playoffs. Like, they're not, in my mind, not cup contenders or anything like that, right? But we all know you don't go from missing the playoffs to being a good cup contender overnight. It just doesn't happen like that. That's what I think is lost on a lot of fans when you think about the tank, right? I think this was a discussion with the Blues a few years ago when they traded Tarasenko, O'Reilly, Mikkola, Chari, all the Barbashev. They traded all those guys. They're all going to be pending UFAs, and that was a discussion at that point in St. Louis. Should they tank, and should they bottom out? Should they, because they didn't have those top tier superstars. Like, those are really hard to come by unless you draft them, or unless you trade a lot and sign a winger to an 8-year contract worth $12.5 million, like the Stars did. It's tough to find those guys, right? Like, it's just honesty. And so that was a discussion, and both ownership and Armstrong decided, yeah, we're going to be competitive. We're going to try to retool on the fly. And in doing that, I think the focus shifted from drafting and developing 18-year-olds, and instead it was targeting young players, targeting young 20 to 25-year-olds, something in that age range. So even, you can see the short-term bets that they place, that a lot of them haven't worked out when, they claim Kasperi Kapanen on waivers, or they trade for Jacob Vrana, they trade for Kevin Hayes. Like, a lot of these didn't work, but those are the short-term fixes that they tried to add some veteran presence or some upside to stay competitive. And then you start looking at what they did last year, and when obviously the offer sheets are the big one, when they get Broberg and Holloway from Edmonton, and see how they performed. And Holloway, true top six winger, Broberg, true top four defenseman, and they got them at 23 years old. Like, they didn't have to wait those developmental years. They paid a second and a third and got them right now as ready to go players. So you look at those guys. Alexander Texier was a younger guy they got from Columbus who didn't quite pan out. P.O. Joseph, they tried, as a free agent from Pittsburgh, didn't quite pan out. But you could see these are all guys in that age range that they're trying to implement into a younger core to fit between the Thomas and Kyrou wave and the drafted age, right? So you're trying to fill that middle ground. And even they did that this summer. If you want to look at the trade with Montreal, they sent Zach Bolduc to Montreal for Logan Mailloux, and like, they didn't have that type of guy on defense in that age range besides Broberg. So what they're doing is instead of, they have those guys that they drafted in the first round a few years ago, those 3 guys there, they have the first rounders, whatever, like they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're not ready to lead teams or do that. And unless it's Wyatt Johnston, that older core of so to speak, of Thomas and Kyrou. Even older than that, they had the group of Pareko and Shen, Falk, Bennington, and then they're filling in that young 20s wave with Broberg and Holloway and Mayu now. Like they're just kind of picking up those small pieces. And I think this summer when they were linked to Bo Byram, it makes sense. Like he's the age range that they're looking at. He becomes available. They're looking at a defenseman that is young, offensively talented. I think the rest of his game probably needs a little bit of work, but this was kind of the plan to do that and check out 20 to 25-year-olds that can fit in their age range instead of going after all those draft picks that take years and years to develop.
Let's talk about those draft picks, though, because you mentioned they don't really have offensive game changers. One of those recent picks that can be, yes, Owen, surprise, I'm talking about a college hockey player from the Big Ten. Jimmy Snuggerud, Minnesota, they disappointingly lose in the first round to UMass, and he comes in seven games, 4 points, 7 playoff games, 4 points. Just talk about his impact when he came in and what you expect from him this year and going forward.
Yeah, I think the thing that even his line mates and the other players in the room, they were impressed by the fact that he wasn't just a scorer. He wasn't just an offensive player. He's a guy that is going in the corners and trying to dig pucks out. He's a guy with high IQ that can see the pass to make. That was one thing that Pavel Buchnevich really enjoyed about playing on the same line with Snuggerud, was that it wasn't just, I'm going to be in the circle and shoot from here. It's, I'm going to go play hockey. I'm going to go do the dirty work here. I'm going to go try to set you up here. I'm going to go try to make a defensive play here. And granted, I mean, he's a young guy. It's not going to be all finished there. But I think now the expectation is that he's going to be a top-line contributor. Like he's penciled in with Buchnevich and Thomas on that line if they try to keep Holloway, Shen, and Kyrou together. So it's a lot of expectations for a guy who hasn't played a full year in the NHL, who hasn't even played like a junior schedule where it's a longer grind. Like college schedule is obviously a different sort of beast, and so it's a lot of expectation they put on him, and he's the first of that next wave, right, Sam? Like it's him, and then there's Dalibor Dvorsky is kind of their top prospect after that, and they're really high on the guy they drafted this summer, Justin Carbonneau. They have a couple first-round picks from Sweden, Otto Stenberg and Theo Lindstein, that are going to be in the AHL this year. So they have that next wave coming, but Snuggerud is the tip of that, and he's going to be in the NHL. Like that's the expectation, that he's going to be there, be a big-time contributor. And I guess the other thing about him is he's kind of renowned for his one-timer in college, right? Like that's one of the things that he was really good at, and they don't really have a position for him on the power play to be in that spot. They have Robert Thomas in that spot on one unit. They have Jordan Kyrou in that spot on the other unit, both right-handers, both in that one-timer position basically for a right-hander like Snuggerud. And what they did is they just put him at the net front. And in talking to him at when they did that, I was like, hey, have you ever played the net front? He goes, yeah, I did a little bit at the U.S. National Development Program. And when we talked to Montgomery about putting him there, he said the same thing. So yeah, I mean, I talked to him about playing in the net front of the power play. Had he done it before? And he said yes. And even if he hadn't, that's the right answer. Yeah, yes, you absolutely have done it before. I'll do it again. And I think the one thing there is that he wasn't tipping pucks or grabbing rebounds. He was more so being an outlet below the goal line towards the corner, helping distribute from there versus being kind of a true screener in the net front. So using him in different ways, and we'll see if he can kind of unleash the one-timer in certain areas of the game this year.
Is that surprising? You just mentioned college versus junior and all the different passes. Is that surprising to you at all? That I know Holloway is another example. We played at Wisconsin with Cole Caulfield, that these guys are able to sometimes come in and do that. I mean, it's such a different game. It's such a completely different schedule, but it seems like more and more of these college players are coming in and having immediate success, or at least some success at the NHL level.
Yeah, I don't know if it's surprising, but it's also a super small sample size, and this guy's pretty jacked up to be in the NHL. like this first 7 games was in the middle of a playoff hunt. Like they were
fighting to qualify, and then he plays in the playoffs. So it's hard to say what that's going to translate to. And when you get to December and January and February, and you're playing Game 50 in Columbus, and it doesn't have the same stakes as trying to qualify for a playoff spot or trying to beat the President's Trophy winner. So I think that's more the challenge in my mind for some college players, is adjusting to that schedule versus the pure readiness for the game.
Luds, we have to get to an ad break, but you made a funny face when Matt was finishing his thought on the net front with Snuggerud, and I want to ask about that before we get to that break.
I was on that power play in the front of the net, second year, 7 goals. Yep, Gainey didn't remember that either. Anybody can do it.
It's about will, right, Luds?
Yeah. I was going to bring up Bob Gainey a little earlier, but I know we got to go to a break, so I won't.
All right, we'll go to an ad break, and then
Matt, let me just ask you. You don't have to answer this. Have you had conversation with Army and he brings up Bob Gainey's name a lot? Yes or no?
Only when I was talking to him about Bob Gainey, like, honestly. Yeah.
We're going to have to get Army on, Luds, at some point, and then we can grill him about Gainey. We'll do a lot more Blues talk. Boy, we could do this for hours, and we're going to do it for at least another half hour here on the DLS Stars podcast. Sam, it's your turn for your favorite one.
What if I told you that the DLS Cowboys crew is doing a podcast in the other room right now as we speak?
They're back.
And they are incredibly loud. This is the one benefit of us never really seeing them, is that we don't have to clash sounds with them across the podcast.
Well, they're usually the 11 a.m. or the 2 p.m. And that,
never get to see Mr. Fourth and Long himself. What's up, Jesse?
He's loud.
All right, let's talk about the DLS Cowboys crew. They are headed.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah. Give me
By the way, no. Hey, Luds, you and Jesse have something else in common besides being former professional athletes at the top of your game. Both of you have asked repeated questions to guests on our show, Cowboys or Stars, and gotten the "that's a great question" response, to which both of you have said multiple times, "That's all I do, ask great questions." So it's amazing how similar you two are at your interviewing skills.
Just remember, on the last little YouTube thing or Twitter or TikTok thing, Jesse picked me. Remember that one?
I remember.
I think that had something to do with fighting, though.
That was a bar brawl, wasn't it?
It was a bar brawl, yeah.
Yeah.
He picked me, but it was to throw at the
they picked you as a projectile, right?
Yes,
well, let's talk about this Cowboys.
Let's talk about this Cowboys crew. They are headed to Vegas with True Fan Travel for the ultimate fan experience. DLS is taking over the Strip for an unforgettable weekend in Las Vegas, and you need to be there. Join the Cowboys crew as Cowboys take on the Raiders. The Raiders on November 17th, Monday Night Football. It's going to be a good time. The all-inclusive trip includes a 3-night stay at a luxury Vegas resort, game tickets, VIP parties, exclusive events with the DLS Cowboys crew, including our boy John Anderson, RIP, and fellow diehard fans, and much,
in the building.
Much more. This is how Dallas does Vegas. So book now at truefantravel.com. He may be alive.
By the way, I just liked...
But he's not alive.
As we bring Matt back on, I just want to say that I love that I'm not the only one that yells at you for that Kat joins in that, because you deserve to be yelled at.
I love you, John.
Matt, boy, so many things on this. Let's talk about the spine of this Blues team for a minute, because you mentioned losing Faksa to Dallas and where Braden Shen belongs, because there was some conversation about whether Shen might be available as a rental or, as a trade piece for a spot like that. But as you look at Thomas, Shen, and now the new guys, Pius Suter and Nick Bjugstad, where do you think they're at 1 through 4 down the middle going into this season?
Yeah, this is my guess. My estimation right now is they'll go, Thomas, Shen, Suter, and then Sundqvist. I think.
Instead of Bjugstad.
I think when I put the lines together and I look at Toropchenko and Walker as wings on the fourth line, Nick Bjugstad, he's a big body, right? But he doesn't quite have that. He doesn't bring the same. I just want to run around and hit and bring energy. It's not a different game for him versus Sundqvist, who obviously isn't very fast, but he can play more of that gritty physical style that they liked with Faksa on that fourth line with Toropchenko and Walker last year. And
In my mind, I look at that third line and it could be Neighbors, Suter, and Butstad playing right wing instead.
Interesting.
And then that'd be my guess. I don't know what it's going to look like in a month at training camp. And as we know, the lines always change throughout the year. So I'm sure we'll see Butstad at center. I'm sure we'll see Sundqvist at wing. I'm sure Suter and Shen might switch at some point, and Suter gets a shot in the top six with maybe guys like Holloway and Kyrou. Like, I think it's all going to be very fluid. But that's the thing that this offseason allows for the Blues. It allows them to mix and match a little bit more than they did previously, because last year they really only had 4 centers. And when they had Robert Thomas hurt, they tried a lot of different things. Like, even at the start of the year last year, they tried to make Paolo Buchnevich a center. They tried to put Holloway in the middle at some point. Nathan Walker was playing center at some point. Like, these are all wings they had to move inside because they didn't have enough centers. And they've known this for quite some time, because they've tried it with Buchnevich at the end of the previous 2 years before starting it. So they've tried to put in a lot of work at developing center depth, and that's what this summer did for them. So I think it's a big positive for them that they're able to do that. We'll just see how it shakes out. But I think right now, I think for my guess, Suter fits in on that third line with maybe Neighbors and Butstad, and Sundqvist goes in on that fourth.
Before I let Luds go to the next question, I was just curious to follow up on that. How much did they lose down the middle with Faksa coming back to Dallas in free agency?
Yeah, I think they really liked what he brought from a physicality standpoint. Obviously, winning faceoffs, when there was a left-handed faceoff on the penalty kill, he was the guy out there taking it. There's a reason that line started a lot in the playoffs. Like, they started Toropchenko, Faksa, and Walker all the time. They liked the physicality, the size, obviously, that he brings, and the penalty killing. Like, all those things are things that you already know that that he brings. Very steady. I think they did want to bring him back, but if you look at the deal that they gave Butstad and the deal that Faksa ended up signing in Dallas, AAV is a little bit higher for Faksa, another year that he got on the term there. So I think you can see where the dividing line ended up being, even if Butstad isn't a perfect like-for-like replacement for Faksa. I mean, he was a bottom six center, essentially, right? So I think they did try to keep him, but Doug kind of saw where it was going. I think the night before free agency, he mentions, I kind of knew we weren't going to get him back, and I kind of had an idea of where he was going to be headed. So that's where they tried it, but it didn't end up working. But they did like having him. Yeah, I enjoyed having him too, honestly.
I agree with all that, Matt, and I do too. Also think it's going to be Sundqvist in the middle. When they signed, Suter got a 2-year deal, didn't he? Something 2-year, 3-year deal.
Yeah, 2 years. Yep.
Suter. Okay, so what is Dallas really getting then with Faksa? You say they'd like to have him back, but we want him back, but maybe not. We'll just let him go. It's not like the money was probably strapped there. They could have gotten him back for an extra year, but what is Dallas getting then? How does Faksa put Dallas? I don't want to say over the hump. It's not fair Radek Faksa isn't a 30-goal scorer, but what is he going to do for Dallas that he didn't do the first go around that they let him go?
Yeah, I think the signing honestly surprised me a little bit, because you could see all the centers that Dallas had, particularly in the bottom six, and you look at the way that all those guys basically rotated all year in the playoffs in particular. Like, they had a lot of guys that could do the job and do it at a younger age for a cheaper AAV at a lower term. Like, it seems like it was not a necessary thing to do. But I think you get him back at a cheaper cap hit than when you let him go. And I think that's kind of impacts it. Like, would he have been traded to St. Louis if he was making less money last summer? Like, would that have even been a thing, or did they really just want the cap space at that point? So yeah, the signing kind of surprised me a little bit, and I think if I can guess, it surprised you, Luds, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they have enough centers, especially bottom six guys. I mean, there were times where Maverick Bourque couldn't even get in the lineup last year, right? Like,
yep.
So yeah, I don't see it being a huge thing. That's going to be a difference maker, and I guess we'll find out. But for a guy like him, physical, I think the Stars probably thought he lost a little bit of foot speed when they let him go, and I don't think he's getting that back, especially for the next 3 years too. So he'll be a welcome presence in the room, I'm sure, but I don't know if it's makes that big of a difference for them on the ice given everything else they have.
Matt, you're a unique guest since you have plenty of experience down here. So I'm going to ask you a Stars question, if not even the one we usually ask.
How dare you?
I know, right? I can ask about college hockey again if you want me to.
I mean, I think you should spit. No, I love college hockey.
Matt, I'm curious. What you just said, it surprised you a little bit with Faksa's signing. What about Pete being fired and then the subsequent hiring of Glen Gulutzan? What about that did or did not surprise you?
Yeah, that one I'm more just like watching from afar, and I think, I think it did surprise me, like that they actually did it. I'm watching that game against Edmonton. I'm seeing the quotes after, watching the Edge of the Day stuff, reading, Tom Gallardi's interview with Kalashaw, and seeing all of that, and then like, you know what? These things happen from time to time where coaches and players don't see eye to eye, and you know what? There's going to be 4 more months from now until training camp opens. Like I think it's probably would have been forgotten at that point, or at least patched a little bit more. So I think I was surprised at that, and especially when you look at his track record as a coach, and particularly his track record in Dallas. Obviously, they never got to a final, but being a Final Four team 3 years in a row is an awfully hard thing to do. It's an awfully high bar to set, and I think you see all those things and you wonder, are we getting better in the coaching position by doing this? I don't know the answer. I don't know Glen at all. I wasn't there for his first go round. I didn't really have a relationship with him when he was assistant bouncing around the league. I don't know him at all or what he can bring or not bring. But I think just the decision with Pete was a little bit surprising given where the Stars had been for 3 years.
You think that,
I got to jump on you on this because you were talking about coaches' relationships. You covered Jim Montgomery in Dallas through the Jim Lights. You referenced it earlier, right? The culture of mediocrity. Lights talks about the effing horse S, all that fun. You were right smack in the middle of that controversy. Then you're there as he becomes the head coach again. From a reporter standpoint, it must be beneficial to have a previous relationship with a guy like Monty as he comes into St. Louis.
Yeah, it usually when the new coach arrives, you're just trying to feel out how they like to respond to questions, how they react before, after games, what kind of just how they act basically. And I didn't really have to do that this time. He showed up in New York and shook hands, said nice to see you again, and we had seen each other when he was in Boston, obviously, and passed by each other in the hallway and say hi. And there were at times where I would see him and have a little conversation and stuff. So we had not a huge relationship after he got fired, but it was professional and cordial and casual when we would see each other. So it was definitely, I don't know if comforting is quite the correct term, but it was familiar. It was familiar when you see someone.
Is he different at all, Matt? Have you noticed any differences between his time in Dallas versus now with the Blues?
Like as a person, like as to deal with in interviews?
Yeah, or just how his coaching style, how he handles talking with you and other members of the Blues beat, the press stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah, I think when in talking to us, I think he's pretty much the same coach. I mean, I remember in Dallas when I was covering him, it almost seemed like there were parts of post game that were, cathartic for him to talk about how poorly they played. Like, it was almost like a not a therapy appointment but like venting, venting about what happened out there. And I don't know if it actually was helpful for him or not, but it seemed like there were sometimes he had things on his chest that he wanted to say after a loss or something like that. And that still remains the same now. And I think maybe it's a little bit of a softer touch these days. I mean, because I do remember still, there was a game in Winnipeg when he was coaching the Stars, and he just said, yeah, this is where you need your number one center and your number one left wing to show up. And that was the year after, I think, light stuff. Yeah. So it felt like it was targeting, Ben and Sagan again at that point. But I think now, I think back to a game in Utah this past season, benched his top line for the first or the second half of the first period. They gave up 2 goals, and then they didn't see the ice for the rest of the period. And after the game, instead of saying, yeah, I mean, we needed more out of Thomas and Buchnevich, I was trying to put the guys out there that were trying to win. Like it was more so about the other guys than criticizing 2 players. So I think he still can be critical. He's still pretty straightforward. Still, I think, tries to be honest in his assessment of the team. And but he still does have a little bit of bite to that after some tough games. And honestly, I kind of enjoy that after as a reporter, to get that sort of rawness or honesty after a game.
I'm going to follow up on my own question, but we need to go to break.
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll follow up. And we have some diehard questions for Matt, too, and they spared no expense. We'll do all that next year on the DLS Stars podcast. Now it's my turn. How about this? Luds is having a great day because it's not hot in Wisconsin, and he doesn't have to do any ad reads, so he's got to be just
at least point at the QR code, Luds.
Living life.
Do something.
Why is he on camera? Well, that's the producer.
This is an hour
there.
of my life I'm never going to get back.
Luds, point to the QR code, will you?
Nothing like getting paid for Luds to sit out in the fresh air in Wisconsin and not have to do an ad read.
I text Luds and I was like, you said 3 words. He said, perfect.
Yeah, he loves it.
Luds.
Check out the QR code that Luds was pointing at, or Sam is drinking over now. That'll take you to the alldls.com website to our introductory offer. I don't believe the training camp deal is still available. However,
$48.
$48, right? If you go to the website,
$48.
It's $48. It's a special intro offer. It is still less than the full price of an annual subscription, which is a great deal. I also noticed that if you scroll down on the page, it says if a special coupon DLLS 36 for 1 year for 30. I mean, it's on the site.
Finagle your way into
so
something. So
check it out, because if you want to sign up to be a diehard, what a great time to do it. Football season is upon us. Shortly, we'll be in training camp for the Stars. The Mavs will be right behind us. Baseball playoffs. The Rangers aren't out of it yet. We pretty much swore them off on Friday.
Oh, they got smacked the other day.
Well, yeah, but then they
Jays.
beat the Blue Jays,
Yeah.
and the Blue Jays are pretty good this year. First place in the AL East. So we're talking coverage. All the teams in Dallas, a great way to do it. Plus, you can get a free T-shirt of your choice. How about the Otter shirt right here? That is just, I think that's spectacular.
Beautiful.
Sam's wearing one of the classic DLLS shirts that came on in the beginning.
There's shirt.
Luds is.
I didn't think Luds would like disappear.
He's inside.
He's
in the
inside.
window.
Well, he's got 15
Looks
seconds.
like a horror
so
movie.
you get a free T-shirt when you sign up for your first year of being a diehard. It's a great way to chime in. Plus, as I mentioned, you can always get
Oh, he
your
put a sweatshirt on.
Well, it's getting a little chilly out. You can get access to the Diehard Only Discord channel, which I'm going to ask Matt some questions from the Diehards right now here on DLS. All right. We bring Matt back in. Matt Schmidt wants to know, not to get all nostalgic, but what is the one Stars player interaction you have missed the most since moving from Dallas to St. Louis?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I do miss seeing Tyler Sagan on a regular basis. I mean, even my first few visits back to Dallas, it was nice to see him. And I think one time he was in the press box. He must have been hurt or something, and I just feel someone leaning up against me, and I look over, and it's him just saying hi. So I think over the years, we became, I guess, I don't know if nicer to each other is the right word, but it was. There were times in the first couple of years where it was a little bit frosty, and then it was fine after that. So I like crossing paths with Tyler. And yeah, I mean, the goalies that I'd covered, they're no longer around there anymore. But Ben Bishop lives in St. Louis now. Scott Wedgwood was nice to see when I would see him when the Stars would come through St. Louis or something like that. Those guys were good, and honestly, a little piece of me misses Jamie Benn. you knew what you were getting out of every interview, and so you didn't have to really prepare for any surprises. And even there was sometimes away from interviews and stuff like that. He was a little bit different. So a small part misses Jamie Benn, but outside of that, not really.
All right. Court wants to, not that we don't love Leah, we do, but we miss you, Matt. What have you done with Ben Bishop, and why is he not listed as Stars player development anymore?
I don't know. I don't know what his status with the Stars is. But
Sam,
yeah,
he's no longer working with the Stars. It's family time.
Yeah, so I guess there's the answer. I haven't done anything with Ben Bishop.
Chlorotis asks, how different of a hockey market, Matt, is St. Louis from Dallas in your perspective?
Yeah, I think they're definitely pretty different. I think I describe it as the bumper sticker test for me. When I was driving around in Dallas and I would see a Stars bumper sticker or a license plate kind of holder or a sticker on the back of the windshield or the back of the rearview window, but man, there's a Stars fan. Like that's kind of cool. And then I got here to St. Louis and you're driving around, you see them everywhere, all the Blues ones, and I was like, oh man, there's a Blues fan there, and oh there's a Blues fan there, and then it finally hit me. It's like, yeah, they're just from St. Louis. Like that's you're in St. Louis, you're a Blues fan, and obviously I think a lot of it has to do with being a smaller market with fewer teams. Like it's the Cardinals and the Blues. Like obviously the Rams aren't here anymore. The St. Louis Hawks left 50 years ago, whatever it was.
Nice.
And so they haven't had a ton of major sports teams here outside of the Cardinals, Blues, and now they have their MLS team. But you look at Dallas, and we know all the sports teams that are there. There's 5 professional ones and college teams and high school teams and all the different events and all that. So I think I would describe it as the bumper sticker test. It's a bigger hockey market here than in Dallas. I think part of it is also the longevity of it. The Blues have been here 1967, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, definitely a bigger hockey market.
All right, one more for you, and then I'm going to let Luds unleash on you again. And this is one you may not be able to answer, may not want to answer, but Matthew, coincidentally, wants to know, did you see the writing on the wall at the time at the Dallas Morning News when it came to axing the full-time Stars beat reporter, as in someone who's with the team most of the week and traveling with them, not just for the playoffs? Not that Leah is doing a terrific job, because she is. Everybody keeps saying, we love Leah, but they miss you. But he just wanted to know if any part of your decision to go to St. Louis had to do with what you saw over at the Morning News. And I know that's a touchy question, so if you don't want to get to it, that's fine.
No, I mean, that's fine. No, I didn't. No. So I think when I look at my 2 professional moves, one from Florida to Dallas and one from Dallas to St. Louis, completely different. Going from Florida to Dallas was because I did see the writing on the wall. They had cut travel there, and once you cut travel, it doesn't come back. And so I knew they weren't really in a good spot in Florida, and so I looked for a job, and that was the time that Heiko moved from the Morning News to the Stars, and so that opened up for me. And so there, I could see it, but moving from Dallas to St. Louis was purely a family thing. My wife is from St. Louis, all of her family's from St. Louis. They all live here, so purely a family-driven thing to move here. Yeah.
All right, Luds, back to you.
Oh, let's see. Well, Matt, I don't think you were around. Like, I'm just going with the biggest news of the summer for the Blues. You probably weren't around when the uterus jersey was out on display and got to report on that. The jersey. Fans seem to be loving and digging what's happening with the new look for the Blues.
Yeah, how do you feel about it?
Dainty, but I think it's cool.
Dainty.
Because of the color?
Yeah, I mean, I like the color combination. The baby blue thing there, a little baby blue for me. But I think it's a good look. I think anytime you throw a jersey out there, again, like the jersey I just spoke about, it's sold. I mean, regardless,
Yeah.
it's hanging on somebody's bathroom wall somewhere.
Yeah, I think they've been working on this for quite some time to kind of rebrand it. And it sounds funny because it's a kind of, as rebrands go, more of a tweak than anything. It's not a full on changing of the identity. They're taking an old logo and modernizing it, and then they're taking their Winter Classic jersey that they wore as a third jersey, and they're taking away an outline of the numbers and then using it as their home jersey. But it has been something they've been thinking about for a few years. I think they probably would have done it last year had the league not switched from Adidas to Fanatics at that point. So that, I think, maybe delayed of the year. But the people here love those Winter Classic jerseys, whether it's the one that they wore in St. Louis at Busch Stadium, the one they wore in Minnesota outside there, and basically that's the new road jersey as well. It just turned the cream into white. So I think they look good. I think, Luz, there are people in the organization that did have concerns about the color being too light and not a tough enough color, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
I think that person, their concerns were kind of relaxed a little bit when they were shown pictures from like 1967 and those early years, saying like this is the true color that we're wearing. So it's like true to who they are, and it's not. I think he was concerned about being, looked at as a baby blue or a powder blue or something, and I think they kind of like, yeah, it's more of just it's a light blue. They rebranded the blue. They rebranded the name of the blue.
Yeah.
So, I think that is a sentiment that was shared by someone in the organization. But yeah, they ultimately got to where they needed to be with it. I think it looks good. I think the road jersey looks pretty good.
This is the last chance I'm sure I'll get to talk. I want to ask you one last hockey question about the goaltending. Okay. Halford comes in, gets a good deal. I said earlier, I think they're somewhere around 10 million. Does he take games away from Binnington, or does he just push Binnington to say, this is my net?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter for this year. I think it was a curious term that they signed Hofer to, his 2-year term. That lines up exactly when Binnington is a UFA. So Binnington will be a UFA, Hofer will be an RFA the same summer in 2 years. So, I mean, in my head, that looks at it and say, well, it looks like Hofer can sign a new contract, become the starter, and use these 2 years as maybe a transition period to maybe push Binnington or, as you said, to get Hofer more starts. But right now, I don't believe that Hofer is there yet. Binnington 2 years ago was one of the top 5 goalies in the league. And last year, I think a lot of people remember him for the Four Nations because his season wasn't as good as it was the year before. But he still is a guy they really count on and really enjoy having, particularly in big moments. There was a time last year heading into Four Nations, you do these radio interviews in Canada, and they're asking, all right, well, what's Binnington look like? And the answer was, well, I mean, he's been inconsistent. There's some been really good games, some have been really bad games, but every big game he's showed up for it. Whether it was opening day, whether it was going to Toronto, always playing in his hometown's a big one, playing in the Winter Classic, like all of those games he performed really well in. And I think even the Four Nations was kind of up and down for him. Like there was a couple of goals early on in that round robin where you're wondering, is he gonna get benched for the championship, right? And he goes out and plays that championship game the way he does, and all of the rest of it is forgotten. And there's a little bit of that in St. Louis where, yeah, you might live with a little bit of up and down in the regular season, but they trust him in big moments. And I think until they lose that trust, I think he's going to be the guy over Hofer until that point.
All right, we have like 2 questions left. We're at the time limit, so we have to go quickly to say thank you to our viewers that joined us today on our television platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe here on the pod, and of course, check out alldlls.com. This is a very brief overtime. We're not doing the 20 minutes play till they win. This is 3-on-3 at best. But Sam, you have one specific question you wanted to ask Matt, so let's do that. Then we'll ask him about the stars that we do with all of our guests during this bit. You want to ask him about him?
Sure.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Matt,
It's like we didn't talk via text.
I thought you were going.
Ago.
I got it. Matt, Steve Ott was someone at least that a few people thought would be an option for the Stars when Pete DeBoer was fired. Was he? Do you think he was at all considered for that? And where does he stand as a potential head coach? I know he was promoted to associate last year, I believe, with St. Louis.
Yeah, I don't have any intel on him and the Stars, but obviously you can make the connection of former player there now as a coach in the NHL. So I honestly don't know whether he was considered or not, but I do believe that there is a head coaching aspiration with Ott. I mean, that's why he went to, I think, get more experience with Team Canada at one of the World Championships. I believe it was last summer. I believe he was part of their coaching staff over there, getting the title of associate instead of just an assistant. I'm sure it includes a nice little pay bump, but it also signals a little bit of seniority as an assistant coach. So I believe that, the aspiration is there. I haven't interviewed about him because assistant coaches in St. Louis are not available for interviews. That's a good old Doug Armstrong rule right there.
What's the deal with that? Why is your buddy not let the assistants talk to the media?
I don't know. I mean, he's in charge, man. I don't know.
That sounds like a Lou Lamoriello rule.
I don't know what the hell the deal is.
Yeah, keep it tight.
We'll have to bug him about that. All right. Before we get to the Stars question, I did want to ask Matt quickly about the Cam Fowler trade because it was a big deal. Obviously, he had been his entire career with the Ducks, obviously played against the Stars, and then got the outdoor game, the Winter Classic under his belt, hit 1,000 games. He seemed to fit pretty well with your group. Is that the feeling? Is that they're pretty happy with him, and obviously got the playoff experience that he was missing the last few years with the Ducks?
Yeah, he was the partner that they couldn't really find for Colton Parayko. They tried Nick Leddy there, and it didn't quite work. So Cam Fowler provided what he did in terms of skating in transition, running a power play, adding offense at 5-on-5. I think if you look at the offensive numbers for defensemen since he was acquired by the Blues, he's in the top probably 15 in the league among defensemen in terms of producing offense. So he provided a lot that, it was really good for them. And we'll see what they end up doing. He's a free agent after this year. They've said it's not a front burner conversation to have with him about an extension or anything like that, just because of his age. And if you look at the Blues and how they got in trouble in the last 5 years, really, it's been contracts for older defensemen, whether it was Justin Falk or Torrey Krug or Marcus Scandella or Nick Leddy. Like they've had these deals where they trade for a guy, they sign him to an extension, and then they're looking for a way to get rid of that contract. So we'll see what they end up doing there. But they do like what he brought last year. And that was a big move that helped change the complexion of their defense too.
All right. So before we go, and by the way, you've been really gracious to give us an hour of your time. We really appreciate it. It's fun catching up with you, not just in the press box. So the question is, we've asked every one of our guests during this other 31 series about your impression of the Stars. And typically it's from an outsider's perspective, but you have, of course, that dual perspective of having covered the team not that long ago, as we talked about earlier, but also now from the outside covering another team in the division, no less. So where do you think the Stars are at going into the 25-26 season?
Yeah, I think when I look at the Central, it's still them in Colorado. I know Winnipeg won the President's Trophy last year, and I'm not a huge believer in them outside of Connor Hellebuck, and I know the goalie gets paid too. but I don't view them at the same level as Colorado and Dallas. So I don't think the Stars got better this summer, but that's just a factor of salary cap constraints and what you had to do there. But I think they're still in that upper echelon. They still have that window open. They're still going to be a team that challenges for a cup, that challenges to win the West. That is one of the teams that's the class of the Central. I think they're still there. I don't think that much has changed from last year to where they are now, to think of them all that differently, to be quite honest. And we'll see how much more comfortable, I guess, Mikko Rantanen can be with a full year now to be in Dallas. But if they can kind of put all that together, and I think it's another inflection point next summer too, when you think about Jason Robertson and what's going to happen there. What can you do with this group together this year?
Did you want to ask him before we sign off about Kyrou and the rumors? Because he just mentioned Jason Robertson made me think of it, or is that enough?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
I think Matt's all Owen and Sam and Luds'd out.
Yeah, I would think so. That's probably in it. Well, Matt, what a pleasure. It's great to have you on. I know we talked about it a couple of times during the season last year and just couldn't make the timing work. So great to have you on now. Congratulations to you and Mary on becoming parents. I wish
Thank
you
you.
nothing but long sleep nights. I know that's not always easy, but just an absolute pleasure to have you on today, man.
Yeah, thanks, boys.
Thanks,
All
Matt.
right. There goes Matt. He is the St. Louis Blues Post-Dispatch beat writer.
Girls,
Luds,
Luds. See you later, Luds.
those Blue Jays, they were active this afternoon.
Oh, can you hear them?
Oh, yeah.
Those are blackbirds, blue jays, woodpeckers. I got a 8-pointer standing out here now. Animal Kingdom.
I was just thinking as we were going to wrap up, you could probably leave the sweatshirt in Wisconsin because you won't need that until about November down here.
I know. Unfortunately, I know.
If you could, listen, I know you're there for this week and then you're coming back here next week. If you could bring any of that temperatures with you, that would be fantastic.
I'll do my best.
Pack it up in the car and bring it. All right.
Hey, Luds.
Bye, Craig.
Tomorrow, guys, our overtime is over. Thanks for Kat for doing double duty today. We have Julian McKenzie of The Athletic, who covers the Ottawa Senators, and then Gord Wilson, who is their radio color analyst, will be our second guest tomorrow as we
Gord
talk about
Wilson.
Gordo is going to be on, along with Julian McKenzie. So we're going to talk Ottawa Senators, Luds. Not the player Gord Wilson, the broadcaster Gord.
I was thinking of a singer.
Oh, well, there's that too. But anyway, Julian and Gord will be on tomorrow, 2 o'clock show right here. Luds will be here, remote. Sam and I will be here. And I believe Elijah will be producing tomorrow. But Kat, huge thank you to you
We'll
today.
never do our show again.
And, of course, to Matt DeFranks for joining us for DLLS. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.